Okay, I'm not much of a rapper, so those opening lyrics had to be done in text format. Now, as much as I enjoy the feel-good, enthusiastic side of toy collecting, every now and then I find that I need to vent a little bit about the less than stellar choices that I've made in my collecting life over the years. Followers of this channel will know that Transformers and G.I. Joe by and large form the backbone of my action figure collection. Some may also remember the collectors clubs for both of these franchises, which included free swag and sometimes exclusive figures for joining up with their separate membership programs. I emphasize the word separate because back in 2010, I gave myself the choice of either joining the Transformers Collectors Club or joining the G.I. Joe Collectors Club. I recall logging in to both websites, reading over the descriptions, and mulling over the exclusive items, then going back and forth with which one I would want to join. This era was a pretty key time for Transformers, with lots of modern figures coming out. There were larger figures such as masterpieces and alternators that were filling the shelves, and the third-party fan-made figure craze that was really ramping up. I even went as far as to attend BotCon in Florida during the summer of this particular year. The Transformers Collectors Club exclusive figure in this particular year was Dion, a character who, in the Generation 1 cartoon, was the companion and fellow dock worker to Orion Pax and Ariel, before the former and latter were reprogrammed and reformatted into Optimus Prime and Elita 1 respectively by Alpha Trion. It's unclear after the Decepticons shoot Dion what exactly happens to him, but speculation has always been that he eventually became the Autobot City Commander known as Ultra Magnus. Now, I'm not saying that this Dion exclusive figure is necessarily great. It's decent, but it's really just a repaint of the universe version of Hotshot, and with Dion, yes, there's the initial thrill of getting a character who hadn't yet been released in the Classics Universe or Generation series, but ultimately, he's a minor character mostly known for taking a blast in the chest after a Decepticon attack. Nevertheless, the temptation to get this character was great enough for me to at least mull this choice over back then. Anyway, while thinking it over and knowing that I could get Dion as an incentive just for signing up with the Transformers Club membership program, I also saw the opportunity to purchase the deluxe punch/counterpunch figure, a buying option that would be enabled once a person signs up with this particular membership. Meanwhile, navigating over to the G.I. Joe Collectors Club page, they were offering Big Lob as their exclusive figure for members signing up. This obviously was pretty neat to me as he hadn't been offered previously and fills a character gap to help fill out the Rawhides part of my collection or anyone else's collection amongst the good guy ranks of the 1987 G.I. Joe movie characters. Okay, so as they say, hindsight is always 20/20, and if given the choice today, it's likely I'd have looked at the price of membership and simply joined both the G.I. Joe and Transformers Collectors Clubs, knowing that I could fill key gaps in both of my collection displays at the time, the price of admission to both fan clubs having been more than worth it at the time. Alas, like a kid in a toy aisle whose parents had told him just to pick one, I went with the Transformers Club subscription. I know, facepalm, faceplant, shake my freaking head. No, there was no one limiting me to my choices except myself and my own conscience. And while I didn't have the benefit of hindsight back then, I still wonder to this day why I didn't either go with the G.I. Joe subscription that would have netted me Big Lob or just buy both freaking subscriptions and called it a day. Those who know how desirable Big Lob would become are aware that I clearly should have made a better choice back then, but here we are and I'm okay to sit here, reflect back, and laugh a little bit about it. It's like having that toy in your hands in the toy aisles when you were younger, putting it back on the pegs, and then realizing that would be potentially the last time you'd ever see one. As the story turns out, I'd eventually part with my Dion figure, finding it a little bit underwhelming over time, even if it was a cool membership reward figure back then. And I would even go as far as to part with my Counterpunch exclusive figure that I purchased at the same time of membership and concurrent receipt of the said Dion figure. Now, I'm not really one to let price solely dictate if a figure is desirable for me, but the further kick in the pants is that Dion is still pretty much going for the same price that is similar to what my membership cost back then. I've forgotten the exact amount, but it's not terribly far off from the recent eBay sold listing prices. That just goes to show that while it was a decent character choice to offer at the time, the desirability of the figure now doesn't differ much from what it was back then. The same, however, cannot be said for Big Lob, whose price has skyrocketed well past the membership price that I would have paid back in the day to receive this figure as part of the service. This is a figure that I feel has aged quite well and has only increased in desirability, not just in my mind and in my eyes, but also in the eyes and the minds of my fellow collectors as well. There seems to be fewer and fewer of this figure floating around, and as I tell this story, I'm trying to wrap my head around passing on this figure back in 2010 when he was literally a few clicks of the computer mouse away on my screen. But hey, at least I'm here to laugh and maybe even cry a little bit, knowing that the choice was in my hands and that I opted for something else. It seems only poetic that I put myself in a situation to choose between, at the time, my two favorite franchises and wish that I had a do-over. Perhaps it's a silver lining and only a partial redemption, but when the 2017 modern style version of Big Lob was offered, I did manage to get him sometime later, and personally I think he looks amazing. Yes, he's filed among the ranks of my vintage figures in my collection, and he's quite tall and maybe a little out of scale, though to be fair, he was supposed to be taller in the 1987 animated Sunbow movie anyway, and he was clearly intended as an NBA-sized person. At least now my Rawhides and Beachhead can display together reasonably well, and if I do ever come across that first 2010 O-ring release of Big Lob again, I'd probably display him in one of the clear acrylic cases with some of my other hard to find figures anyway. Who knows, the chance may come again, albeit probably never again at the original price point, and I'll just have to live with that. In any case, what I'm trying to say here is that not every collecting related story can be considered a victory, and this one certainly is not. However, it is a story that I'm having fun sharing here with all of you right now, regardless of how it ended. I simply have fun talking to the viewers of this channel as if you were sitting over a beverage with me, sharing our experiences, be it good or bad. And to be honest, a lot of you out there probably have similar collecting experiences and regrets that you can share as well. I know we all live and learn, and to be fair, I was surrounded by a lot of other Transformers collectors at the time in my life in 2010 and really didn't know or collect alongside other G.I. Joe fans until much later. But that still doesn't help the sting of wishing I could go back to my younger self and say, hey buddy, go to the other tab on your computer screen and pick that subscription service instead. The overall desirability of G.I. Joe, at least in my experience, seemed to spike years after this particular experience. I noticed a turnaround in interest around 2017 when the Toys That Made Us featured a documentary episode on G.I. Joe, and also with Mark Bellomo's 3rd edition hardcover G.I. Joe guide that would come out in 2018. Add to the fact that the episodes of the original Sunbow cartoon have been showing up on Tubi TV, and the collector craze seems to have reached a height that wasn't considered fathomable back in 2010 when I initially passed on the Big Lob figure. But hey, if you happen to have any stories like this to tell, or have joined either the G.I. Joe or Transformers collectors clubs to get their figures in the past, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section of this video. And before we sign off, I'd like to give a special thanks to my Patreon supporters whose names can be found in the video description. Also, please visit patreon.com/toyconnections if you're able to add further support to this channel. Subscribe if you already haven't, press that like button to spread this video to more viewers, and share it with your friends. Otherwise, yo Joe, transform and roll out, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.